Okay, we're back again here at allpointstv.com. I'm glad you're here. We're going to be talking a little bit about the issues that we talked about last week. We were talking about Donald Trump's in the going forward with these trials and these judges that are making these rulings that are extra constitutional in terms of them being outside really of what is really binding, should be binding, based upon the Constitution of the United States. I'm going to be talking about the requirements of the Constitution as far as what is happening to Donald Trump, and I don't think it would be happening if Trump was part of the network of politicians that come up through the Beltway that have graduated from one level in the government to another level, and finally at the highest level, which is the way it's been done in the past. Either you have someone that's come up through the ranks, or they have been persons that served in the military services. And Donald Trump has neither of these. This is an out of the normal landscape of how we have presidents chosen in this country. And he's the first person, by the way, that came out of nowhere and didn't have any elective office. And you can see it's the same shock that anyone would have if you have someone coming in your profession and they've had no prior experience, and you're looking at this neophyte coming into the land space of persons that, career politicians, let's call them that, and people that have been in politics on different levels all their lives. And here's a person coming from outside of the political structure and not going up to the ranks, but coming into the political process at the highest level. And there's no higher level than the president of the United States. And the resume is such that, how do you deal with someone who hasn't had to come up to the ranks, selling over here and finessing over there and manipulating over in this direction and doing different things to get ahead and to get elected? None of that. But coming in from the outside, being pushed by the people who are in a movement, the mega movement, the Make America Great Again movement. Who can disagree with that out here? We need to make the country great again. And he's being pushed by the people. And you got these persons in government that claim they are representing the people. And how can both be true when you have different energies that are going in different directions? Because the establishment is going one direction, Donald Trump is coming from the outside going in a different direction, and you're trying to bring that and blend that together. So it's created a problem. But at the same time, what has been in terms of what's happened in America has been very revelatory, because we a lot of things have been revealed by coming to the surface now, and things we didn't see, we're seeing now. And to that extent, Donald Trump has played a very positive role, because a lot of things that we did not know about what was going on, a lot of things that have been uncovered by a person having come out now to defend their turf. We now see that a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes were not all of what we saw in the limelight, and we now have to rethink a lot of things in the country. But now that we have this, what we have going on right now with Donald Trump, we have to rethink how we're going to get back to the place that we were intended by the framers of this country. I think that I really think that Trump has been a positive influence in more ways than what we consider, because Donald Trump has come from another place where he has to be governing in the name of the people, because he doesn't have any corridor of power outside of that. So the intention is to have someone to represent the people, and really Trump doesn't have any choice in the matter, because he's not part of the establishment that's already in place. You just simply come in and you take a seat at the table of those that are already established as politician, just sit with them and be a part of the I don't want to say gang, but the group of establishment leaders, and you simply join into that. And Donald Trump didn't do that, and by him not doing it, we now have some things that have come out of the woodwork we were not privy to. But both groups have set upon Trump, and to an extent, then they're setting up against the people because the people put him there. And if he is not palatable to them at the table, then that's a statement about how they feel about the persons that voted him in, because Trump was voted in, shockingly, in 2016. The man was voted president of the United States. There's no other way to figure how did he get there. He didn't have anybody inside of the structure that pulled him there. The voters did it. So that's if you have, I don't care how you get here. If you have to get here in power, in the way that he did to represent the people, then getting here in that way was a good thing for the country. Because the way that the rest of them have gotten there, they gotten there through other traditional means, where you start out at a certain place, you elevate yourself to a different place, and eventually you become a representative, or maybe a senator, but you're inside the government and you run from that to the next level of power. And Donald Trump went and beyond all of that, declares in his candidacy for president. You all remember him coming down the escalator and coming down to announce. I can just see his announcement now. I'm running for president of the United States, and the ha-has that followed that were to be expected, because how does a man come out of nowhere and run for the highest office in the country, and not have a resume either in the political arena or in the military service? And Donald Trump didn't have that. And how does he come in talking about running for president, didn't have a resume that would be the traditional things you've had in the past? This is something new. How do you credit that? Well, it was a laughing stock. But Donald Trump began to do some things that showed, well, I guess his business background was a part of it too. His business background was such that he didn't have any political experience, but the country was ready for something different. Political experience had not worked. You can see where that led. Look at the conditions of the city and the country. That had not worked. So Donald Trump comes along. There's no incumbent at this point. Obama had run for 2 terms, and he was not running again, running probably through some of the surrogate persons that were in his administration, but he was not on the ballot. And so he came at a time when the seat of the presidency was open, and people were looking for something new. And they've been looking for something new for quite a while, because they had been looking for something new with Obama. He was a different candidate. I think Obama was groomed because there was a difference. Even racially, there was a difference. But I think Obama was actually, when I go back and look at his trajectory to the White House, I think Obama was actually chosen to be president when he was at Harvard University. I've seen some indications of that when you see Colin Powell going over to Harvard, not as a student, going there to meet Obama. And I think there's a grooming that was going on. How they go into these. They look at Harvard and these other Ivy League schools, and they are looking at possible people that can join the government in some role. And I think they looked at Obama and saw that this person could be at some point promoted up to the level. But look where he started, though. He started out in the lower. He started out in Chicago, and later on became a senator. Gave a speech in 2004 at the Democratic National Convention in 2004, and said some things that, the sound bites were very good. He's not he's not representing blue states or red states. He's representing. He wants to be a person that speaks for the United States. That sounded, very good. That's what person wanted to hear, and he said it so well that people began to see the possibilities. In 2004, this man could come and be a star on the national stage. And in 2008, they did that. So in a way, he came up through the ranks as well, through the fact that he had been a senator, not very long. He was, that stepping stone was used very quickly to go to the next level. But here's a man coming out of nowhere in 2016, came down the escalator and announced he's running for president. And you look at his resume, he didn't have any political background to make that seemingly a legitimate quest on his part. But he did have the business experience and also the charisma of the man. The thing that you saw in his program called The Apprentice, you saw that in his having been the head of of these modeling programs. The man has a knack for leadership. You saw it in his building the business that he had. And I think the country was looking for something that was different. They had been looking for something that was different for quite a while, but that was not. It did not come out the way it was intended. They were right in terms of what was happening was not working, and looking for something different as a way of responding to it. But that didn't work either because of the persons that were selected to play that role. I think Obama really could have been a historic figure in a way that he would be a model, because he had an opportunity to come in as a bridge builder, and that's what it sounded like he was about in 2004, and it seemed like he was going to do that in 2008. I remember, for example, Wolf Blitzer, when when Obama and Hillary Clinton were debating, and they were talking about. I know Wolf Blitzer wanted to make it appear that it would be a dream team if one of them would be the president, the other one would be the vice president, and you would have a black male and a woman in the two top roles, political roles in the country. Look at how that would be. That would be something different. And it looked like there was enough energy, and there was the youth and so on. And it just looked like that would be a dream team if you could put that together. And a lot of persons were looking at that as a ticket that could lead the country away from some things that were in its past, and lead the country to a different place, because the country is trying to get over a lot of these humps a lot of these bumps in the road that it had. This country has been looking a long time to get away from some of the racial baggage in its background, although the racial background is misunderstood. It has not been what a lot of persons think it's been. They think the country has been racist, but that doesn't actually explain the country. There's been a lot of opportunism about the issue of race in the country, but the country itself being racist, I think that's a stretch. This country has never been a racist country. There's been and we can see that now more clearly, given the fact that look at these politicians now opening the floodgates to the third world, and allowing the third world to flood into this country from Latin America and from really 160 countries, very few of them in Europe, and there are very few Europeans coming in this country through this migration that you have, these open borders. So that you have to go back and refigure what was that about then. If they're letting people in here, they're changing the demographics of the country, and the country is no longer going to be a majority white country. It's heading toward that at an accelerating rate right now. So you have to go back and see what was it really about race, or was race being used by politicians as a way of keeping the people apart and split and all the rest, so they can so that a group of politicians could wield power using this fractional policy making as a way of keeping people divided and confused, so that a small group could come in and control both groups that they're put at war with each other over nonsense. I never thought, quite frankly, in my looking at this over time, that this could possibly be about what they were saying it was, in terms of people having a hatred of somebody's color. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody can even remotely claim to be intelligent where you have you be at some at variance with a person because he has this skin color or someone has another skin color. I've never bought that as an explanation. I can see that it being used and people being battered with that, and then given some favors because that's what they're saying this was about. I can see you taking advantage of the favors, but for them to put the face on it as they're doing it because the people taking the favors are themselves racist, I never bought that. I never thought that. And being from Alabama, quite frankly, I saw it up close and personal in terms of being in too many homes, because I had a little job that I was doing, and I go around. We use a lot of coal for heating and things like that. I go around and bust the coal for people, put the coal in their bins so they have coal to burn in the wintertime, and go around and sell some things to different to the cleaners and stores, pop bottles and things like that. I go and collect and sell those. So I was in a lot of, and then a lot of people would after I get through working for them, cutting the grass for them, so they would invite me into their home and offer me some water, some punch or something. So I'm having I'm growing up in a segregated environment, but I'm having a lot of moments of integrated living among the people who are segregated by law. But I'm having some contact on a personal level that is different from that. And so I'm seeing it a little bit different than that. I don't see anybody resenting me because of my color, any of that. I'm not saying that. I'm hearing people say it. I'm not hearing it in the places where I was. I'm in the heart of Dixie. I'm in. If you look at the tag in Alabama, it says the heart of Dixie. Why is the heart of Dixie? Because the Confederacy was born in Alabama. The Confederacy, the first Confederate government, was set up in Montgomery. And so you would think then, if that would be true, you'd have an adverse reaction to race and color in Alabama more than in other place. And I didn't find it to be the case in my own experience. We round the corner, you played with persons that were white. There was a guy, I think his name was Gary. We'd be playing football. Gary's out there playing football. In our neighborhood playing football with all these blacks out there. There was no problem for us. We went to school different, but we had a lot of integrated interactions within because you're living around the corner from blacks and whites lived in the same neighborhood, not on the same street, but around the corner from each other. And that was a going rate in the South everywhere. There was a lot of camaraderie in the South between blacks and whites. So I didn't buy this stuff that this was about somebody's skin color. And I do not buy today that this country was ever, as a country, a racist country. Certainly there were racist institutions in the country. Slavery was a racist institution. But let's understand how many persons were slave owners in that. Make this war about maintaining slavery. What percentage of the people in the South were slave owners? If that's the nature of the war, then how do you explain that there are non-slave owners out there in the majority fighting in this war? They're not going to benefit by owning the slaves when the war comes to a close. They were not slave owners when the war started. That's why you're not going to convince me, not on your longest day, you're not going to convince me that the country was posturing because of some adverse reaction they had to someone's skin color. That never made any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me now, and you can forget trying to make any sense of it to me in the future. I'm not buying that nonsense. I've seen too many examples of where it's not true. And I come out of Alabama because of I could do better economically elsewhere, but once you are in the South, quite frankly, I don't think anybody that's ever been in the South and lived in the South, was raised in the South, will ever see themselves other than as a Southerner. A lot of persons that came to this town because you had General Motors here. What they did once they retired, many of them came here to teach because the salary in the South was very low. And once they retired, all of the person went back to their southern states, Alabama, Mississippi, yes, Mississippi, Louisiana. A lot of persons here from Louisiana. Some were not so many to the western part of the South, but in the heart of Dixie, in the heart of the South, the Dixie that Elvis Presley is singing about, Memphis in that area, Tennessee and that, those persons went back home. They retired and went back to the South to live. Because I know how they feel, because I feel the same way. They feel once you are from the South, you are a Southerner, and you remember those days, because even though segregated, you saw the community that had a certain way in which it operated, because there was what you call the Southern hospitality. The Southern way of life was different. And because it was agrarian, you had, I remember having raised in Alabama. I remember everybody had large families, because in more agrarian society, you have large families because everybody was a worker. You get out there and in those fields, and you were planting corn and things like that. Everybody planting. You don't have one or two children. You got 4 and 5. Every family that was in my neighborhood had. If I never saw a family in my neighborhood where there were no children in the household. Everyone, marriage was a going rate, and having children. I consider myself we were a small power in my neighborhood, because in my neighborhood, you'd have those Craigs and those Doyles and some of those persons. They had like neighborhoods as family members. I mean, I'm talking about those Craigs were like 12 and 13. A lot of that kind of family you saw in the South. Just a lot of close-knit people. And I didn't see any animosity, quite frankly, among the people in the neighborhood, whites and blacks in my neighborhood. We knew kind of like the rules. They lived here and around that area and on that street. We lived on the street here. As long as that was something that you recognize, but it wasn't like you had it hermetically sealed off from each other. And whites came in the black neighborhood and blacks went in the white neighborhood. In fact, blacks were going across town working in the white neighborhood and working in white homes. That was very constant. That was a constant in the community. So all this division, I came here to see it, but it was strange to me to look at it from the way it was practiced in the northern area, because this was very different for me. What I experienced in the southern area was something very, very different than what I experienced when I came here. And I saw a lot more of a distancing between the groups than it was in the South. The South, there were a lot of persons that knew you by where they knew the person by name. I mean, people were they wouldn't call you Mister or anything, but it'd be Sam, and they felt close to the blacks that they knew. Ice House Eddie and things like that. It just was a southern place with a southern culture, and you looked over a lot of the stuff because that's what you gravitated toward. The fact that your community was safe, the people were around each other and lived and going to each other's homes. I mean, they walk through the door, your front door is open, they just walk in. And a lot of your friends will come over in my neighborhood. They come over at the time they knew you were going to be having dinner, and we were all getting, free. We could call it, free stuff. We were all getting free food and things like that. And so we were like in the middle of the alphabet, the M's, and they would come over. Those that were in the A through L, they'd be the first ones that be served because they're at the top of the alphabet, and it would serve you. The state would serve you your commodities for that month based upon the alphabet that you had in your name, last name, and the A through L's would be the first group. And when that food was going down, then the M through whatever the next set of alphabets were, that food would be coming in, and you find them at your house. You over their house too when their food comes in. That's how the community was. And those persons that's going back to the South, they remember that. That's why they're going back down there, because they can remember when they were in a community that relied upon each other. That's how we did it in the South. And I have a lot of experiences with people in the white community that were not this thing that you saw on TV, where they were stirred up by these. These people were being stirred up by these politicians, and that's what and they played it on TV. Now they'd be surprised to find out that other South that existed, that was the everyday South, where persons were living in relative peace and harmony with each other. All that stuff, they were pushing people against each other. I understand what you were doing there too, but that's not what I saw in the South as a generic way in which the South was operating. I know what you saw on TV. I'm talking about how it was in terms of people around the corner and you around the other corner. I remember going around there because they had the scooters over there, and we didn't have the toys. And over on our block didn't have the toys. We went around the corner and got the toys of those other kids, and around there peddling their toys and things like that. People come out on the porch and they're watching them. They never stopped us, but they would come out there watching. And and so so when you tell me that it was about color and stuff like that, I have to tell you that is something that's made up and embedded in the politics of the country by these politicians that benefited from it. It wasn't a benefit to any of them. It was a benefit to the politicians by putting signs up and saying, you sit here and you sit there. They were doing that for power reasons. And I don't, and having read about Wallace and some of the rest of them, I don't think they believed any of that stuff themselves. I read something recently about Wallace and what he was saying about blacks in his courtroom. Wallace was was talking about respecting blacks and things like that. But then he found out what he's going to do here is divide people so they could then use it as a wedge to get into a higher position of power. And you ought to read something about the backdrop of what was going on, so that you don't just get your images from TV, but get into the background of that. So that, in a way, it works a certain way in terms of the political scale. And if you come up through the political way in which things operate, then you come in and you take your seat and you're part of the apparatus. But if you come in there like Donald Trump did, and you have not had that experience of going through the apparatuses in place, you are a threat. And Donald Trump came up through a different process. The man was really admired, loved, appreciated, celebrated by blacks. They're what they're creating right now in 2024 is going to make it very hard for them to do what they did in 2020, because those Shaq O'Neal and a lot of those persons that knew Donald Trump knew what kind of person he was before they started all this press stuff they're doing. They're coming out saying that Donald that's not Donald Trump. That's the media. See, the media is able to make it appear to be something that is not. Now they're coming out of the woodwork, and I'm just waiting to see what they're going to do this time to finesse things, because you can't say that Donald Trump is not going to get a sizable number of the black vote. If he gets if Donald Trump gets 12% of the black vote, really he's going to get more than that. Probably about the way it looks right now, but like 22% of the black vote. Maybe higher than that, because people did have the experience of 4 years of Donald Trump, and they were doing pretty good under his administration. So it might be more than that. But it's been very hard to island people like they did prior to Donald Trump becoming president, because you could say some things about it before the man was in the White House for 4 years. But his record was such that there was a bishop the other day that was on one of the programs that on one of the podcast programs. They broadcast his program on the internet. Calls himself a bishop. I was listening to what he was talking about, and he was speaking about Donald Trump. He was saying everybody talking about the man tweets this and he says that, and he's making comments along this line and so on and so forth. He said, yeah, but did the man put it into public policy? What was the man's public policy? And I was, channeling and going, you're going through different feeds, and I had to stop and heard this person say that. I had to stay there and listen to this man for a while, and I said, my goodness, this man is saying what you're hearing more and more people say about Trump. Yeah, he said some things that persons found very, very caustic, and took some issue with the sound of what the man was talking about. But the question that the people are coming back to right now was, what were the man's policies? This idea that he was abrasive and he said some things that were caustic and things like that, that's junior high school stuff. You vote based upon who you like and a popularity type of thing. The question now, in terms of a policy issue, is the policy issue for the country is, what did the man's policies, what were his policies, and what were those policies, the benefit of those policies to the people in the country? Did it benefit the country or did it not benefit the country? And on some total of all of the issues along that line, on one side, not positive, on the other side, positive, Donald Trump's positive outweighed the negatives by a quantum amount. This was not even close. This man made this country a better country to live in, and that has been acknowledged. I'm waiting to see, quite frankly, what they're going to do with these court cases, because they have got to stop Donald Trump. The people are not going to do it. The people are going, if Donald Trump gets to November the 5th, Donald Trump will be the 37th president of the United States. There's no question about it, given what is happening right now in the country under Biden. I mean, the people are aware that something is wrong here, that this could not have been what they said it was, given that this man came and go up a flight of stairs to get on the Air Force One, the president's plane, without falling down three or four times. He can't put a sentence together, and they're now asking even those that voted for Biden. And I don't think there were enough persons that voted in 2020. There were enough of them that voted for this man to give him 82 million votes. There's no indication that could have happened based on the energy in this campaign. In fact, I think that if you go back and look at it very carefully, you'll see that in the inauguration, they used the COVID and also the military there because of the what had happened on January the 6th, which they said was an insurrection. But what it really was people going to Washington because they did not believe that this man that was in the Oval Office had been now crowned the next president number 46. They did not feel that Joe Biden had won the election. The man had run 2 times before that. The third time was a charm, but they couldn't understand how a man that was a charm the third time had been overlooked for the presidential office in 2016, and they had the forerunner for the Democratic Party was Hillary Clinton, who was the Secretary of State under Barack Obama, but wasn't even holding an office at the time that she was then selected to run, because she stepped down at that time. And Biden was the vice president. He was overlooked and skipped over him to get her as a candidate in that year, and then came back and ran prominently and fortuitously as the greatest vote gatherer in the history of the country. This man got 82 million votes, and we never saw this was a shock because we never saw any evidence of it. And here was his I would say mentor in a way. Here was Barack Obama, who showed how to do it in terms of running a campaign that became a crusade. And Obama only got at the highest level of his popularity in 2008, 69 million votes. And it fell off from there 4 years later because Obama was on his way out. People were, you go and look at Obama's numbers in 2012. Yeah, he beat Romney, but that was not that should have been Romney should have won the election, quite frankly. But you look at what was Romney, what was he representative of? You couldn't identify where the man stood on anything. And so, but in that election, you go back and look at the numbers. Obama's numbers fell off by 7 million votes. Obama got about 62 point some million votes in 2012. So his vote totals have gone down. And most presidents who would run for the presidency number have gone down because they got experience at that point. And how many times do you hear people say, "Were you better off 4 years? Were you better off 4 years earlier?" Well, very few persons. I mean, if the country is running upon debt, and debt is creating inflation, very few persons can answer that they were better off 4 years earlier, because things get geometrically worse because inflation keeps eating away at their paycheck. So to ask that question, the answer is already grounded in the inflation, and the answer is always no. You're not better off. You ask that question continuously, people vote against the incoming president. That's why you keep going back and forth. But this is what happened in 2020. Donald Trump's numbers went up, didn't go down. Obama's number went down. Donald Trump's numbers went up. He got 62 to 63 million votes in 2016. He got 75 million votes. He got 12 million more votes in 2020 than he did in 2016. The numbers went up by 12 million. That's unheard of. You can very few persons have done that. Tucker Carlson made a very good point. Not very many people are aware of the fact that the president that had the greatest disparity in terms of popular vote and his opponent getting whatever popular votes he got, the one that got the greatest disparity between votes was, in fact, Richard Nixon. Nixon had won every state except one state in 72. And look at the number of votes look at the number of states that he carried. The man carried every state except one. And look at what happened later on in terms of the downsizing of his popularity during the second term. Everybody was hollering at him and wanted him out of there at that point. And of course, you know what happened to him in terms of being set up. I say set up by the power brokers and behind the scene. We every once in a while you see, if you watch it carefully, you'll be able to see them coming out to wield power from the places in the shadows. And I kept watching that in terms of this thing about what happened to Richard Nixon. The shadows got him.
You notice that it's okay. Nobody's cries bloody murder or anything when it's happening to a Republican president. But when if this machinations are going on behind the scenes for go against any Democrat, the press would be screaming bloody murder. For matter of fact, it has half the problem of going against Trump right now. Who's going against Trump is the press itself. And it's like, I've never seen this. I mean, another thing is there's no attempt. When I was taking journalism, the classes I took, they were trying to say, you want headlines that are grabbing attention, but you also don't, you want to remain in neutrality. You want to just basically report the facts. What are you like? Oh, the awful Trump policies. I never seen that kind of descriptiveness used in any other headlines that have used against Trump. It's like concerted effort to put pressure on everybody to make them think that it's gaslighting. They're trying to make you question yourself for liking Trump, and they're giving you all kinds of this anger, but they never explain why there's this anger against Donald Trump. And they expect you just to buy into their anger, and if you ask a question of them to point out what's going on that's so vehemently bad about Donald Trump, they just act like you're like a moron. You can't obviously see this. Oh my! I've actually had them say, I just want to discuss it. Then if you're not rational enough to understand this, I'm like, you're the ones getting angry. You're the one that's getting angry.
Yeah, they're never going to forgive Trump because Trump crashed into their party. This was not supposed to happen, folks.
Well, the GOP himself, I mean, I've said this time and time again. I won't get to, he was essentially the third party candidate. We've always discussed that, what would happen. He was that. They turned on him. Look at his own vice president, Pence. This guy was a quisling, a traitorous piece of crap. I never did like Pence. He's too buttoned down, too polished. I'm going to say this too. Guess what, guys? Not everybody who has conservative values lives in the damn suburbs. Okay, and I'm sick of. And that's why I've always got treated like like somebody holds like a little dog turd underneath somebody's nose. Every time I was around Republican from like the GOP part, the party around here, they act like that's how they treated me. I'm like, because I'm an urban dweller. I'm not one of the suburban. I'm not golfing with Biff and Buffy. That's why, and that's the reason why. But Donald Trump, for some reason, a multi-billionaire, he resonated well with the working class. The Republicans in this area don't do that. They don't even try to. They have no way of doing that.
They will always consider Donald Trump to be an outsider because he did not come up the way in the ranks that we're used to having our politicians come up through the ranks to the presidency. It's like you have to go through the steps. And Donald Trump did not go through the steps. He violated the steps. He erased all the traditions of how you arrive at the highest office in the country and did something very new. And those that are part of the establishment are threatened by that, because if you can come in from the outside and ride on the shoulders of the people like Donald Trump did, then that's a threat to all of those persons who use the politics not as a stepping stone to anything, but that is their career. There are people that have a career in politics. Their presence is not that of a businessman. Their presence is more of a parasitic presence, and they're threatened by people that have the kind of skill that Donald Trump has. Threatened by it because there's now a way of contrasting what Donald Trump brings to the table and what they bring to the table. And if what they bring to the table is rejected, what do? If Donald Trump is rejected by losing the election, he goes back to Mar-a-Lago, and he all goes back to those properties they're trying to take from him and manage all those properties that the man has, because they're some of the most gifted and valuable real estate in the world, certainly in this country here, but in the world, all over the world.
Okay, another thing they say he overvalued his properties. Okay, no, we brought this up, and in case somebody else has got that objection to Donald Trump, he overvalued his properties. When I knew last time I heard about people getting mortgages and stuff, and they'd have property already owned, and you get a mortgage made to buy another house. They would they'd use the other house as collateral, properties for collateral. The bank would have some expert come on, evaluate the property, and make the assessment, right?
Right.
So even if he overvaluated it, if they were really genuinely concerned about depositors and the banks I'm talking about, and their depositors, safety of their depositors, they would send out somebody to assess those properties. So they would say if it's where the market value, knowing that market. So, I mean, I don't see how he could have got away with pumping up the value on them. As soon as I heard about that, I said, okay, tell me how. And they can't. Everybody who was a liberal, they don't know that much about the real estate or whatever, or loans or something, or they're just not coming forth. But they're not giving me information of why he could have possibly even got away with that if the banks were supposed to be doing what they did. Now, the banks in this situation come back and said, hey, he paid back the loans, or we're looking to do business with him again. But no, that's not good enough for a bunch of people who never had dealt with those kind of levels of financing or whatever. That's not good enough.
Yeah,
he did something wrong.
John, what they did in Trump's case is that they got him on both sides of the question. If they can go after you for things you did wrong, and also go after you if you didn't do anything wrong, then there's no place in which you can escape. There's nothing wrong with Donald Trump's numbers. The banks would have been derelict in their duty if they didn't go and do their own assessment of the liability they had and loan this man. We're not talking about no thousands of dollars here in terms of what Donald Trump would be requesting they loan to him to run his businesses. We're talking about multi-millions of dollars of loan. They're not doing that based on Donald Trump's word. They're going to put their own assessors out there, which they did in this case here, like they always will do. They don't just loan you money out of the clear blue, because that's a good way to go out of the banking business. If you want to have your doors closed and your bankers coming there demanding their money to get out of there because they know you're risk averse, then you don't do what they did. What they did was what all of the banking institutions do. They want to know what kind of collateral are you putting behind the money they're putting in back of you. And Donald Trump could have come up with the money, the millions of dollars that he needed, but that's not how you do business. Being a businessman, he knows how you operate business. You don't use your money. You use the other person's money. You don't. The people in the I was listening to this guy named Phil Scott. Phil Scott this man has done a tremendous job of investigating. He's the latest one out to have investigated what happened in Dallas in 1963. And he said something very pivotal in that video that he made. He said that if you want somebody, if the intelligence community wants somebody gone, you don't do it. You get somebody else to do it, or you do it with somebody else so that the fall persons can be focused upon, and so the same thing in the business world. When you want to expand your business, you have the money to do it, but you don't use your own money. You use your own money for other things. When you want to expand, you borrow the money, and you use your money for other things. Maybe you need it. Maybe you don't want to be in a tight because there are these things that come up that you have to prepare for and things like that. But you're a businessman, and your business and your business acumen has you to look at the long range. Is it better to borrow the money or pull it out of the kitty that you have and use it? But if a tight comes up, what's going to happen in that case? And so Donald Trump put a figure out there for his property. They didn't come out here to see if they can in fact loan him based upon those figures he gave them. And their figures, if they don't match, they say no. If they match and they feel that you're not a risk, then they say yes to it. They did that in Donald Trump's case. There's no crime here, and they know there's no crime here. Now, why are they going after Donald Trump? They're going after Donald Trump because Donald Trump is an outsider, and both parties will allow a certain amount of leeway to go after this man because neither party wants him in there. You can say what you want to. They don't want Donald Trump in the Republican Party. But because the people are so riveted to this is something different and something that works. And 4 years of that, they saw it work. A lot of that stuff you're saying now, he's this, he's that. Yeah, this bishop was saying, yeah, they say that, but was that in the man's policies? And the answer is no. Blacks benefited from Donald Trump.
Well, I'd like to know where he was, like I said, anything racist or xenophobic or homophobic ever in his life. I mean, well, I'm serious. I haven't seen it. But no. I have to assume because he's a white guy.
Right.
He's a wealthy white guy.
Too male, too stale.
Yeah.
And all the rest of the stuff that this racist, the person that's really racist is Letitia James. The comment she's made, she should be disbarred from the comment she's made.
I don't see where these smaller level politicians, officials from other jurisdictions, like state and local government, like in New York City and New York, and then there in Georgia. I don't see how these people at lower levels can actually enter the fray of this fight. I don't see how they got the legal impetus to do it or the legal justifications for doing what they're doing.
John, anybody that would speak the way Letitia James speaks and to do what she did and going after Donald Trump. This lady, this woman is the Attorney General of the state of New York. And for her to have campaigned upon, I'm going to get him, which is a violation of the Constitution on so many different levels that you would say that and run on that and then prosecute based upon that, because that is so much of a violation of Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, which forbids bills of attainder. They've done that against him by saying they're going after him. Kathy Hochul said that. The governor of the state of New York said that don't worry about your businesses being in jeopardy in the state of New York. You're all right. You're going to be safe. We after this guy here.
See, so that's admission right there from her own mouth. So that should be thrown out of court. The judges should be thrown out of, not disbarred, but what they call recused. They should be forcibly recused.
Yeah.
And all this, and that Erdogan, whatever his name is, that weirdo looking guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he looks like somebody I wouldn't want to anywhere near a public school. That guy looked like a sinister kind of creepy.
Yeah, he is creepy. And John, and this would never have been said about anyone that was incubated within the system. Donald Trump is not incubated in the system. Donald Trump was outside of the system, pushed into the system by the people themselves. That's a threat. You can say the House of Representatives, but who are they in the House that's representing the people in the House? Who are they? Who are the ones in the House of Representatives that are representing the people of the United States? I can name probably about 2 or 3 of them. There's a person that is raising this question. I think his name is Higgins, raising this question. He asked Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, asking him, "Did you have any human assets out there on January the 6th?" And when Wray tried to squiggle out of it and say, "Well, he can't discuss that," Higgins said, "The answer should be no." Why is the answer no? He was actually bringing up the question of who was out there. Who are those persons that were wearing those masks that were looking different than the other persons that were out there? Why are they wearing masks and they're breaking the glass out, and the ones that were inside the building walking up and down and let into the building and not doing anything once they got in there to destroy anything? Yeah, sitting in a chair, but what were they destroying? Jacob Chansley, the guy wearing the horns. Yeah, he looked ominous and all the rest. That's why they focused the cameras on him. But they went and showed the camera, tracing him throughout the building. The man just walking through there peacefully. What is he in there for? What is he getting 4 years for? because the person that broke those windows glasses out, they got a scarf around their mouth. Why isn't Garland looking for facial recognition technology to use to find out who they are? They can tell who those persons are wearing that outfit over their face. They've done that with the person that were there that were outside. They've actually put facial recognition on people who went there. They were outside the building, and they couldn't even hardly see their faces. They got a way of identifying who's in Washington by looking at the feed to the satellite. They can pick up your cell phone that is there on that at that day at that time. They're identifying some people for that. And that's what they're saying. We are not finished yet rounding up everybody that was in Washington. They're saying another 1,000 folks. They're going to round them up and put them in jail.
Did you hear where they were actually went after the FBI went after to get the records of people who merely looked at a YouTube video about cryptocurrency? They got over 30,000 names just for somebody looking at a very publicly available to you video on YouTube. This shows the depth of what you're going after people, which is ludicrous. Watching a video that's a publicly, if they had any issues, should have taken it down. My God, they've done it several times for me.
Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, it's ridiculous.
We're living in a surveillance state.
And we're okay with it as long as the Democrats are getting away with it on the Republicans, anybody else who opposes them. We try to do that on them, which I don't think any of us would ever advocate. They would be furious. They'd be chomping at the bit.
I'm looking to see what they do in November with this election. The people are going to elect Donald Trump president. I want to see what the people who are in the shadows, those that are in the administrative state, those that are part of the bureaucracy, those that do not come before the voters every 2 to 4 years and seeking their endorsement to stay into these offices that you vote candidates in for. That's one segment of the establishment. And that's one segment of the deep state, as a matter of fact, but it's not the most powerful part of the deep state. The most powerful part of the deep state is a part that does not submit itself to the vote, that you don't even see and know exists. That's why Donald Trump's president has been so important, because we now know there are regulators in the background that are regulating a lot of things and running a lot of things that we did not understand or see that they were there doing that. But now they came out and we see, wow, where did that come from? Who are these people? And there's a whole cadre of them that are running things, who it seems like the politicians are answering to. Certainly if they're the billionaires. I mean, who thought before this election that George Soros has the influence that he has? And the Koch brothers, who knew that? Who knew? All these people, these billionaires that use their financial influence to tweak things to their benefit by making sure that people that are friendly to their interests will be the ones in power, and the ones they have to listen to because they're the ones that financing them being reelected, which is what they're interested in. I mean, that's what politicians are not going to do anything to bite the hand that feeds them. They are up for election on a regular basis, and they need money to do that, to be in Washington at the same time, do fundraising. And the fundraising is not like doing that on a daily basis. You got to do what Obama did in New York the other day, rather than going by the place where the officer was being funeralized. They didn't have time to do that. That's too far away, 20 minutes away. That's too much work. But they were in New York, and in one day, they'd raised $26 million. That's when you have deep pockets, you don't have to spend a lot of time campaigning. Just throw a party, bring the money into the same place, raise the money, and you got enough to run for the next election. That's what politicians do. They don't do too much work. They get the money and they run with it. Donald Trump doesn't even take a salary, and he's supposed to be the one out there selling out the country to Russia. The man doesn't even get a salary didn't get a salary for 4 years, donated the money back to the government so he could pay for things the government needs to be paid for, because the government is let's be honest here, the government is in fact bankrupt. They bankrupted this country, these politicians have, because they're not businessmen and they do not know what they're doing. This is the government has been run like as a business, and Donald Trump was doing that. Not that he's bringing that deficit down. That's gonna look. I don't know how you're gonna handle that. We're talking about 30 and admitted $34,000 billion. I mean, you say 34 trillion. I want to expand to let you see what those numbers are. There's 34 at their admitted rate now, $34,000 billion. How do you pay that debt off? Well, you don't. And we'll see what happens here. But this collapse is built into the process. Nobody's better off than they were before. But Donald Trump did a darn good job. Everybody's saying this, that even behind the closed doors, they're saying it. They have to give the man credit. He did a very good job of governing this country under the circumstance. But nobody's going to be able to get it from out behind the country from behind the 8 ball. It's too deeply embedded behind the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. And you're not going to be able to change it by simply waving a wand somewhere and getting rid of it. This has been going on for ever since 1913. This debt has been accumulating by them going into the Federal Reserve, where the government had access to its own bank. This is a very big mistake that was made. And somebody ought to read Griffin's book called "The Creature from Jekyll Island." Let's read that book. This is how we got. This is where the country began to go downward. A lot of quirks before that. But the downward turn, where you see the turn going almost in a straight line down, that would be from 1913 to the present time period. And under the circumstances, Donald Trump did a very good job. They don't appreciate what the man did. They resent the example the man set, and they want this man gone, like last week. This unprecedented behavior against Trump, this unprecedented accusation against Trump by those that are in surrogate roles in less state roles. These are not even big state officials. These are lower state officials. Fannie Willis is the Fulton County prosecutor. She's not even a state prosecutor, bringing a president to court, a former president to court. Letitia James, the attorney general, bringing a former president to court. That is unheard of, and it's unconstitutional to do it, cannot be done, and would not be done if Trump was not Trump. But Trump is being Trump, and that's a problem for them. And they want this guy gone. And they're doing things legal and extra legal to make sure that does not happen. Keep watching, folks. We're getting ready to see something here, because they got to do something creative to stop this train. Because if this train gets to the station, I can tell you right now, those that's in power will not be wielding power, and it will be the death of the deep state if Donald Trump gets in there for another 4 years. That's what's getting ready to happen, and they know it. That's why they're trying to stop this train. Okay, we got to get out of here. I want you to follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.